Yesterday we discussed about values. We used host path value as of now, and today we'll see how to use NFS So we will see how can we use NFS values. Let me connect to the server where I have a kubectl installed. So as of now, this database pod is using host path value. If you see, we are using value, this database container as of now using this folder is mounted with this value. This folder is mounted with this value, this MongoDB value. And if you see the MongoDB value, this is of type host path. So whatever server, in this server, in this node, the pod is running. So in the same node, it is using that host path. So now instead of using host path value, now we will see how can we use NFS value. So instead of using host path value now, instead of using host path, we have a NFS server. We installed NFS server yesterday. There is an NFS server, this one. We installed NFS. We have set up the shared directory. And in these machines, we installed client NFS client software. NFS client software. Now we can use NFS value instead of using that host path. So let me show that instead of using host path, now we will see NFS value. First, let me delete that whatever I have created using host path. So this replica set as of now is using the database. Replica set is managing one pod. That pod is using host path value. So let me delete that and I will create using NFS value. Now instead of using host path, I will change my pod manifest to define NFS value. So here, the database pod, this value modes, and here I have a values, right? Now instead of host path, now I will change NFS. So NFS, I need to provide a details, NFS details. NFS server IP. NFS server IP. So I'm going to use this server private IP address. NFS server, this IP address. And again, I need to give a path. Here, what is the directory which I have to give? What path I have to give here? What path I have to give here? So whatever we have created in yesterday in NFS, we have created one directory and we try to share the permissions. NFS, we have given the permissions in that NFS server, right? So that is /mnt/share. So again, this volume name and this volume mount name should be same. Now instead of using host path, what type of volume we are using now? NFS volume. So Kubernetes supports lot of volumes as I discussed, right? Kubernetes volumes. If you see, Kubernetes supports lot of volumes, EBS, host path, Azure disk, Azure file, MTDIR, as we discussed. Here, the volume type is getting changed. So yesterday we used host path. Yesterday we used host path, this one, host path. Now similarly like host path, we have a NFS value, NFS. NFS value allows an existing network file system share to be mounted to a pod. So you must have your own NFS server running with share exported. So that is what we have done yesterday, right? So we are using NFS volume something like this. In our pod, we are using something like this. So NFS we are using. So this is the path which you want to mount. So now if I apply this one, it will be using NFS data. Let me log into the first NFS server and see what is there as of now in the NFS server. So let me log in to NFS server. This is my NFS server. If you see, yesterday we created one directory. As of now, nothing is there here. As of now, nothing is there because no pod has mounted so far this one. So now let me try to deploy that pod, whatever we are planning to create with this volume information. So this will be using NFS. So I am using private IP. Will it able to communicate with private IP, guys? As of now, these servers, maybe this server may get a pod or this server may get a pod. So now I am trying to use NFS private IP address. NFS private IP address, right? Will it able to work? Because all are running in AWS. All are running in same AWS VPC, same network. So we have already opened the port. If you see in the NFS security group, in the NFS security group, if you see already we have opened NFS server security group. Already we have opened the port. Now let me apply. So I deleted the replica set, database replica set. Okay. So I'm going to apply this complete file, but all other objects are already there. So it will not do anything. Only the database replica set and its pod will be created with the NFS value. So with NFS value, I am using this. Now if you see, this replica set got created. I deleted the old replica set which was using host path. Now this is using NFS. If you see, the pod database pod is up and running. If I describe this pod, now kubectl describe pod. Now again, this is using this container, this pod container is using this value. Now what type of value we are using now? If you see here, type is NFS. Now where is our data? This database folder is mounted with NFS. Is our data is in this server, this folder? Now the database pod, the database container is mounted with the file system of this server where your pod is running, or it is in NFS. It's in NFS value. Now if I go and check here, what is this data? This is NFS server. What is this data? This is Mongo database, the container, the Mongo database container slash Mongo slash data slash DB is mounted with this folder. That slash data slash DB folder is mounted with this server with this directory. So this is where my data is there. Suppose, let me access that application now. Let me access that application. So I'm going to use any server IP, Kubernetes cluster, either master or worker, any machine IP. That port, whatever port the service port 32067. So the database pod, now the front end pod is communicating with the database pod using this service. Database pod container, this database container is mounted with NFS directory. So this is where my data is there. This is where our database data is there. This is mounted with this guy. Now, if this pod is moving around in my cluster, suppose this pod is moving around, this pod is moved to here. Instead of running here, still it is using NFS data, NFS server. Right? If you see currently, this database pod is running in this server 142. In 142, in this one. In this one, it is running 142. So if something goes wrong with this 142, if your pod is scheduled to 178, now do I need to worry about the data consistency? So the data will be, if I'm using external value, do I see the same data, whether if it is moving around your cluster, or do we see like, different type of data? Now, if your pod is moving around, can I see same kind of data wherever it is running? So we are using NFS to use the value. Now, let's come to high availability. Let's come to high availability in database. Sir, suppose I want to have two pods. I want to have two pods, two database pods. Now, if I use two database pods, you can use NFS to share the same file system, but that is not how it will work. If you require, you can use same value with multiple pods. If required, you can use same value with multiple pods. If required, you can use same value with multiple pods. Something like, 1 second. Something like this, two database, you can use same value, but it will not work something like this in databases also. Databases also you have a cluster concept. If you are from a DB background, you can understand in database also you have a cluster concept. DB cluster, we call it as a DB cluster. So if you want to make high availability in database, it will be like a cluster. There will be one master, like, and slaves, database also. If you want high availability, this is not the how you are going to use, right? You are going to have in the same NFS, you can use multiple directories. Each pod will be using different file system, not same file system. It is not like, three process with same storage, single storage. Three process with single storage. It is not something like that we are going to achieve. Three process with three process with three separate storages. Now, if I use same volume, if I have it three pods or two pods, process will be three. What about the storage? What about the storage? There will be a single storage. Data also you should have a high availability, right? And in master slave database, master slave architecture, read only. Slaves will be performing only read operations. I mean to say, whenever some application is connecting to the database, right? So read, select conditions. Read operations will be carried in slaves. Write operations will be carried out in master. So that is completely different process. You are going to have a database multiple pods. You are going to have a database multiple pods. In same NFS, different directories. I mean to say different volumes. You can have a same NFS server. In same NFS server, you can have something like this. Volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, three different directories with this pod one volume, this pod another value. And again, you have to create a cluster between the databases also, the way we have set up a cluster for Kubernetes, right? The database cluster also you have to set up. You can run your database, but you need to set up a cluster between these database pods. So that is how it will work. You can use multiple volumes. I mean to say, you can use pods with multiple, same volume can be used with multiple pods, but that is not how it is going to work. Now, if I try to scale database as two pods, it will not work. kubectl scale, kubectl scale rs, if I scale to 2 hyphen replicas 2. Now, if you see this one, let's see what will happen after some time. Now, it is not coming up. Why it is not coming up? kubectl logs. If you see why it is not coming up, this database, right? So already that pod is running, one pod is running. Now same file system you are trying to use for this pod also. Same file system you are trying to use this pod also. And already one pod is running and it is using the storage, right? So another MongoDB instance is running on the same file system. So you cannot have two databases, especially database perspective. You cannot have two databases using the same file system, same value. You can have a multiple databases with multiple volumes, and between those databases replicas, you can set up a master slave. So that is how database cluster works. If you see here, it is clearly saying another DB instance, another MongoDB instance is already using. Because what is happening now? This database pod also trying to use same directory, this /mnt/share. Already one DB instance is using this storage. Another DB instance is not able to create a files or log the files because another DB instance is running. So you can use something like this. Something like this. 3 different databases or multiple databases with multiple directories. Like this is one directory. One you can mount with this directory, this value. One you can mount with this value. So this will be running, this will be running. Then you can create a relation between these two as a master and slave in a database. That is how it will work in the database if you want to have a high availability in the database. Hope your question got clarified. But if it is some normal file system, right, you can, if it is some normal server, right, normal process, you can mount same value with multiple pods. I'll come to that. What type of volumes will support read write many? What type of volume supports read write mode? There are some access modes. We have access modes in Kubernetes. I'll come to that after some time. Read write once, read only many, and read write many. These are the access modes we have in a Kubernetes volumes. So this host path, read write once, EBS, read write once, right? When it comes to read only many or read write many, NFS, if you go for a cloud, EFS, these are read write many, which means multiple nodes or multiple pods can use same value. Read write many, multiple nodes or pods can use same value. But if I have a EBS value, one EBS value, that can be mount or used by one node, one pod. You cannot use EBS with multiple nodes. AWS concept, right? Can I use EBS with multiple? Can I attach EBS to multiple servers? Similarly, if I am using EBS value, will I able to use same EBS value with multiple pods which are running in a multiple nodes? If I am using EBS for mounting my Kubernetes pods, can I use EBS for multiple pods if those pods are running in a multiple nodes, same EBS value? No, right? So EBS is basically, what is the access mode? Read write once. So one pod, one node can be used. It's not a shared file system. If I want to use read write many or read only, read only many, these supports if you are using Azure file. These are the access modes. Read that scale down replica. So now we'll try to understand. In Kubernetes, we have a persistent volume and persistent volume claim. What is meaning of persistent value? Kubernetes volumes, right? If you see, there is a concept of persistent value and persistent volume claim. persistent values. So there is a concept called persistent values. So we are directly using, as of now we are directly mounting host path or NFS, whatever it is. As of now we are directly mapping storage with pod, the storage with pod. Now, if your your controller, you deleted, suppose you are deleting your application completely from this cluster. So does Kubernetes maintains the volume information, like how many volumes you have? In Docker also we discussed, guys, bind amounts and persistent value. So if I use directly like a bind mount, now I am like, I am using like directly bind mount. Does Kubernetes has any information like volumes information, how many volumes you have in this cluster? Now I am able to mount something with my pod, but does Kubernetes maintains the volume information outside the pod lifecycle? If you see, in Kubernetes we have a concept of persistent volume, PVC, persistent volume and persistent volume claim. As of now I am directly using with my pod. If you see, I am directly mapping the storage with my pod, what type of storage I am using. Sir, NFS or EBS or whatever it is, or host path, something like this. So does Kubernetes will maintain the volume state outside of the pod lifecycle? Suppose I have deleted this controller. I have deleted this controller, this replica set. I deleted that replica set, so my pod is also getting terminated. Now, does Kubernetes has any information about that volume? What type of volume you are using, right? Now, do I have that volume information in this cluster? Like what type of volume you are using? Which pod was using that volume? So do I have that volume information? If you see, I am not using persistent volumes. So Kubernetes doesn't have any idea about your volume life cycle. So what is the recommended way to use volumes? In Docker also I said, what is the recommended way to use volumes? Persistent volumes. Again here, persistent volume is not some storage, guys. Persistent volume is not something like, the host path or NFS. So persistent volume, you create a persistent volume based on your requirement, your storage. Create a persistent value of your choice. I mean to say, create a persistent value with host path or NFS or EBS or whatever it is. First, create a value, persistent value object. Create persistent value object. It is like a pod. What pod represents, guys, in Kubernetes? What pod represents in Kubernetes? Process. What pod represents in Kubernetes? Kubernetes process. So similarly like that, first create a PV. What PV represents? What PV represents? Persistent volume represents piece of storage, some storage. That storage can be any type. That storage can be host path, that storage can be NFS, that storage can be EBS, etc. You create a persistent volume of your choice, host path, NFS, EBS, whatever it is, based on your requirement. Then you use that value, with your pod. Then you use that volume with your pod. So your volume information will be maintained irrespective of the pod life cycle. Your volume information will be maintained irrespective of your pod life cycle. You use same host path, same NFS storage, but with the help of PV and PVC, persistent volume and persistent volume claim. Kubernetes supports different types of volumes. As I told already, Azure Disk, Azure File, MTDR, everything. But all these volumes you try to use with persistent volumes so that Kubernetes will maintain the volumes information irrespective of your pod life cycle. So as of now, we are using something like this. As of now, we are using something like this, especially this one, host path. Directly you are mentioning host path here. So is it a persistent volume? Like I mean to say, is Kubernetes is going to maintain your volume information outside of the pod life cycle? If I use something like this? No. If you see, I don't have what volume I was using. I don't have a database pod. So I don't know what volume I was using, where is my database storage, because I was not using persistent volume concept. Now same host path you can use with persistent value. Same NFS you can use with persistent value. So in Kubernetes, persistent volumes basically a piece of storage in your cluster. It's a piece of storage. It can be host path, it can be NFS, it can be EBS, some storage. Persistent volume represents some storage. So persistent volume provide storage resources to the pods. Suppose your pod requires some storage, you can use this persistent value. You can use this persistent value concept. So the storage resource exists independently from any pods. The storage resource, the persistent volume exists independently from any pod that is using. So volume information will be maintained irrespective of your pod life cycle. So persistent volumes exist independently of your pod life cycle. So this is persistent value. And what is persistent volume claim? Now in a Kubernetes, The way I created a pod, before I creating a pod, I need to create a persistent value if I want to use this concept. This is my Kubernetes cluster. I have a master. I have a workers. So far what we have done, in your pod manifest only you have mentioned whether you want to use host, path or NFS. Now there is a concept called persistent value. First I need to create a persistent value object, PV, persistent value. First I need to create a persistent value objects, multiple persistent values, right? This represents some storage. This represents some storage, PV. First I need to create a persistent value. Whatever pod requires a value, suppose this pod requires some value, some storage. So what this guy has to do is, this guy has to claim the value. This guy has to claim the value with the help of another object called PVC. There is another object called PVC, persistent value claim. There is another object called PVC, persistent value claim. Suppose this pod requires some storage. This pod requires some storage in a Kubernetes cluster. While creating this pod, you have to claim. You have to claim a value with the help of PVC, so that this pod will get some storage. If this pod requires some storage, persistent value, we have to claim the persistent value. You have to claim the persistent value. If this pod requires some storage, you have to create a persistent value so that this PVC will be using some persistent value so that you are getting some storage. Now, irrespective of the pod life cycle, your PVC and PV will be maintained. Suppose I want to deploy another pod. I want to deploy another pod, and this pod also requires a value. This pod also requires a value. How can I claim the value? Can I directly use this PV name in my pod, or I need to claim a storage? This pod requires some storage. What we can do? We need to claim the value. You create a PVC. You use that claim in your pod. You use that claim in your pod. So this pod will be using this value with the help of PVC. There are two objects here. Persistent values, persistent value claims. Persistent value is simply a piece of storage, guys. Just some storage. PV represents some storage. And what is PVC? Suppose pod requires access to the persistent value. Suppose pod requires some value. How can how can pod get an access to the value? Suppose pod requires access to the PV, persistent value storage. Pod can obtain the access through PVC. PVC binds or mounts persistent value to the pod. PVC binds or mounts the persistent volume to the pod. So if this pod requires some value, you have to claim the value with the help of PVC. So when a pod want access to the storage persistent value, it will request the claim by specifying the size and access mode. What is the access mode you are looking? What type of volume you are looking? Suppose this pod is looking for like 1 GB storage, and access mode should be read write once. So you have a multiple volumes in this cluster. Suppose this PV is created with only 500 MB. This PV is created with only 500 MB. This PV is created with only 500 MB. And this PV is created with 1 GB. This represents storage. Suppose this pod requirement, you need a 1 GB of storage, and access mode is read write once. And this access mode is read write once. And you have another PV, another storage. This access mode is read write many, and this is also having 1 GB. This volume is also of size 1 GB. Now you are trying to claim the storage. You have lot of storages, lot of volumes, persistent volumes. Now based on your requirement, this pod requires 1 GB RAM and access mode is read write once. You are going to specify in the PVC object, I need this much storage, I need this much this access mode. Now this claim, this PVC will mount some storage. So while creating a PVC, if I say I need 1 GB storage, I need read write once. So I have these many storages, these many volumes. Which one will be mounted with this pod now? This is also read write once. This is one storage. This is one storage. This is one storage. So which one will be mounted? While you are claiming the value, while you are claiming the storage, what volume will be attached now based on this? Whether this one will be mounted or this one will be mounted, the second one will be mounted, or third one will be mounted. This is also having, let's say, 1 GB read write once. Whether first one will be mounted or second one will be mounted or third one will be mounted or fourth one will be mounted with this pod. You are creating some volumes, some storages, and you are going to claim those storages based on your requirement. So when I'm claiming this is my requirement for this pod, I need 1 GB and access mode is read write once. Now which one will be claimed? Whether this one or this one or this one? First one second one, third one, fourth one. So which one will be mounted as of now? By looking at this, when I am trying to mount, I have these many storages in my cluster. And this pod requires a storage. So we are creating a claim. While creating a pod, we are creating a claim. Which one will be mounted for this pod? Any guess, right? Why not second? Why not third? Why not fourth? Second one also having a read write once and 1 GB. First one also having a read write once and 1 GB capacity. Why not second one? Why not second one? It is not like a sequential. Sorry. So why not second one? Why not second one? Why it will not use? It is not like sequential. So this volume is already used by this pod. This volume is already claimed by this pod. Will it able to again claim the same storage? Can I use same volume again in another pod? Unless until if it is read write many. Why can't this one? Why this will not use this one? Why this will not claim this one? Why this will not claim this one? Why not this one? How much I am expecting? How much this pod is required? How much storage this pod is expecting? 1 GB. And this storage is created with how much capacity? 500 MB. So will it match this one? No. Why not this one? It is having 1 GB. The last one is having 1 GB. What is the access mode I am looking? Basically, what is the access mode my pod is expecting? Read write once. This volume is created with what access mode? Read write many. So this will not match. Suppose this is having 2 GB capacity also. This is having 2 GB capacity also, fine. This is actual storage. I am expecting 1 GB. Will it mount or it will not mount? This is actual capacity. I am expecting 1 GB. Will it mount? It will mount. If it is 1 GB or 2 GB, also it will mount. Persistent volume represents piece of storage. Persistent volume represents some storage in your Kubernetes cluster. These PVCs are maintained outside of your pod lifecycle. If my pod requires a volume, how can I get the volume for my pod? If my pod requires a volume, how can I use these volumes? With the help of what we are using? With the help of what we are using? Suppose this pod requires some storage. What concept we are using? Persistent volume claim, PVC. Persistent volume claim. Guys, very simple. PV represents some storage. PV represents a piece of storage in your cluster. Persistent volume provides a storage resources. Persistent volume provides a storage resources for your Kubernetes pods. You can think PV as one disk. you can think PV as some storage. So this storage resource exists independently from any pod life cycle. And the pod who requires access to the persistent value, they will obtain the access through persistent value claim. A PVC binds or mounts persistent value to the pod. PVC binds or mounts persistent value to the pod. When a pod accesses the persistent disk, right, it will request access to the claim by specifying the size, what is the access mode, right? So PVC will, mount PV so that your pod can use that PV. Now, if I use PVC concept, right, persistent value, so persistent value, as I told already, persistent value is a storage in your cluster. Okay. PVC. PVC is a request for a storage. PVC is a request for a storage. So persistent value claim allows, I mean to say, pods to consume the storage. So you are abstracting the underlying storage from the pod. You are abstracting the underlying storage from the pod. Earlier we were directly saying I want to use host path. Earlier I was directly saying NFS. Now I am just saying I need some piece of storage. This PV, this PV can be host path, this PV can be NFS, this PV can be EBS, right? You are abstracting the underlying storage. Your pod requires some storage. That's it. Your pod requires some storage. You are saying, I need 1 GB RAM and access mode. So the PV can be of any type. The PV can be host path, the PV can be NFS. So it is abstracting. PVC is abstracting the underlying storage from the pod. What type of storage you are using, whether you are using host path, whether you are using NFS, that doesn't matter to your pod. You are just saying I need some storage. This PVC will try to claim some storage. That storage of type anything. That can be host path, that can be NFS, that can be EBS. So persistent value claims allows user to consume and abstract storage resources. So you have a PV, you have a PVC. So what is the life cycle? Suppose I want to deploy a pod. I want to deploy a pod. That pod requires a storage. So what is the life cycle, guys, now? I want to deploy some pod. I want to deploy some pod. That pod requires some storage. I will create a claim. I will create a claim, PVC. If I don't have any value, if I don't have any PV, does my pod will be able to come up? Suppose in my Kubernetes cluster, I want to create one pod. That pod requires value. I am using PVC. I am saying PVC. I am using PVC. I am saying like I need 1 GB. Read write once. Suppose there is no PV, there is no storage objects created. You have not created a persistent values. Will our pod will be able to up and run? because we don't have any storage. This PVC doesn't have any storage to claim. Will your pod will come up? If I only create a PVC and if there is no PV, will our pods will be up and running? It is like, let's take this way, guys. This is you. This is you. And you are trying to claim insurance and you don't have an insurance. Will you be able to claim? Like claim, let's take this way. This is you and you are trying to claim an insurance and there is no insurance. Will you be able to claim? Let's take this is you. This is your property. Maybe this is your car. Your car met with some accident. You are trying to claim and there is no insurance. Will you be able to claim? Right? Similarly, this pod requires some storage. This pod requires some storage. You are trying to claim the storage and there is no storage. Will you get a storage if there is no storage here? You don't have a PV. Not insufficient space, Prasanna. Understand the concept. There is no storage here, first of all. You have not created a storage. You have not created a PV. Can I claim the PVC if there is no PV available? So I need to create a persistent value. If I have a persistent values, now if I create a claim, based on the storage class, based on the access mode, based on the storage capacity, your PVC will be claimed to some of the PV. So you will get a storage. Your pod will get a storage with the help of PVC. So now, what is the life cycle? What is the life cycle of your PV and PVC now? PVs are resources in the cluster. I mean to say some storage in the cluster. PVC is request for those resources and also act as a claim. So persistent values. There are two ways you can create a persistent values. As an administrator, PV, there are two types of persistent values, guys. There are two types of persistent values. Static values and dynamic values. Static values and dynamic values. So as a Kubernetes administrator, I can create a number of persistent values. As a Kubernetes administrator, I can create a persistent values, objects. As a Kubernetes administrator, I can create a persistent values of any type, whatever storage you want to use. As a Kubernetes administrator, you can create a persistent value. And whoever requires the value, what they need to do? As a Kubernetes administrator, I created a multiple values, persistent values, manually, static values. Whoever requires the value, what they need to do? They have to claim. So if this pod requires a value, they have to create a claim. So it will be attached. Suppose some other pod requires a value. Again, what they need to do? Again, they have to again they have to claim. If this pod requires a value, again they have to claim. So some of the value will be mounted based on the storage capacity, based on the access mode, some of the value will be used. Suppose another pod is trying to again use value, another pod, one more pod, again they can create a claim PVC, another pod. Again this PVC will be using this PV, let's assume. Now one more pod is trying to create a value. One more pod is trying to use value. One more pod is trying to claim a value. One more pod is trying to claim a value. Now, or one more pod is trying to claim the value. Does this pod is going to get a value now? Now this pod is going to get a value now. Your pod will be able to up and running. Yes, you can use same PVC in two pods if the volume supports read write many. If the volume supports read write many, for multiple pods you can use same PVC, persistent volume claim. Now this guy is also looking for a value. Now does this guy will get a value? Does this guy get a value now? This pod is claiming this value. This pod is claiming this value. This pod is claiming this value. Now another pod, we are trying to deploy another application, another pod. That pod also requires a storage. I am trying to claim. Does this pod will get a value now? You will not get a value because there is no value. So as a Kubernetes administrator, what I can do? What I need to do? I need to create a PV, persistent value. If I have a PV and if it is matching this specification, then it will be attached with this. As a Kubernetes administrator, what I can do? I can create a values manually, static values. As a cluster administrator, create number of values. They will have some details. They carry the details of the real storage, like what type of storage you are using, whether host path, NFS, EBS, what is the capacity of that storage, right? So these values are available for the users in the sense pods. Users in the sense pods. So static values. Manually you are creating. And what is dynamic value? What is dynamic value, right? So dynamically value has to be created. Dynamically value has to be created. You are creating a PVC. You are creating a PVC. So pod is creating a PVC. Pod is creating a PVC. And if this PVC doesn't find any PV, if this PVC doesn't find any PV, pod is creating a PVC. Pod is claiming the PVC. You are creating a PVC and you are using that PVC in the pod. And if the PVC doesn't find any any value, the volume can be dynamically created. These volumes can be dynamically created. using some concept called storage class. Provisioner. Provisioner. Storage class, I can say provisioner. Dynamic values. In some circumstances, pod could require a persistent value that doesn't exist. In some circumstances, a pod could require a persistent value that doesn't exist. In those cases, it is possible to have a Kubernetes to create a value. It is possible to have a Kubernetes to create a value, provision the value as needed. If storage class is configured, if storage class is configured. Suppose I have a Kubernetes cluster with some storage class configured. Suppose I have a Kubernetes with some storage class configured. Whenever you are creating a PVC, if the PVC doesn't find a value, the storage class will create a value. Then dynamically, then the PV can use that value. So first let me demonstrate static values, then I will come to dynamic values. So now let me go to my console. Copy. PVC. I am using a concept of PVC. I will go in a reverse way, guys. Okay. So now here I am not mentioning what type of storage I need. Values. I am not saying what type of storage I need. Right. Here I am going to use volume as persistent volume claim. This one. Persistent volume claim. Persistent volume claim. Persistent value claim, something like this. I am going to use PVC object, persistent value claim, something like this. Something like this, persistent value claim. I am going to mention the claim name. But did I created a claim? Can I use? I can say something like this. MongoDB PVC. Now I am trying to claim some value, but did I created a claim? Now will it work if I apply? Will it work? I am going in a reverse way. First I am showing the problem, then we will see what needs to be done. Now I am trying to use some value. I am saying persistent value claim, this claim name. Now if I apply this, will it work? Do I have any claim created? Do I have any PVC? Do I have a PVC with this name, whatever I am referring here? Here I am saying persistent value claim. The claim name is this. So did I have, did I created a claim? Will it work? Now if I apply this object, what error I will get? What error I will get? This is one object in a Kubernetes. What error I will get? There is no PVC, right? No PVC. I am pod is using PVC. I will get a message saying that no PVC. First, I need to create a claim also. You are just mentioning your claim name. Similarly, let me show that. Let me delete RS, that MongoDB RS. As of now, I am directly using NFS. Now let me apply this. I will get an error. Now if you see why it is pending, why it is pending now, what is the problem? My pod is representing, my pod is using some claim PVC. Why it is not able to schedule? It is expecting for what? What it is expecting? The claim PVC. Did I created a PVC? I need to specify. I am deploying my pod. I need to specify the requirement, how much storage I need, what is the capacity I need. So I am creating a pod. I want to use persistent volumes. So I need to specify. Did I specify my claim? How much I need? What is the access mode? Did I created a PVC for this requirement? As of now, no. So now we need to create a PVC object also now. Now we need to create a PVC object also, something like this. You can create before pod or after pod one more object. You can create something like this, before or after, that fine, that is fine. One more Kubernetes object. Something like this. You need to create a claim PVC. This is one object. Something like this. Persistent value. Persistent volume claim. Your claim name. Access mode. How much storage you need. Something like this. PVC. Persistent volume claim. Something like this. Persistent value claim. Persistent value claim. Something like this. I need to create a persistent value claim, something like this. So API version V1 kind persistent value claim. Your claim name, whatever you are using in your pod. What is the persistent value claim name which I am using? This one. And access mode. What type of access mode you are looking? I am looking for a read rate ones. And how much capacity? Based on your pod requirement. Suppose your pod requires storage capacity of 1 GB. You can say 1 GB. Storage class. So as of now, did I configure my Kubernetes with the dynamic storage? I mean to say, do I have any storage class, dynamic storage class? So if I just create a PVC, this storage class will create a PV if it is not available. As of now, do I have any storage class? Is there any dynamic provisioner in my Kubernetes cluster as of now, which will create a volume for us automatically? Let me show that. kubectl get storage class. Do I have any provisioner? Storage class is nothing but some software, guys. Storage class is nothing but some software. Provisioner. Do I have any provisioner which will provision the storage for us dynamically, like EBS provisioner, NFS provisioner? So when I create a PVC, if I mention the storage class, suppose if I have a storage class provisioner configured like EBS, when I create a claim, if the volume is not available, when I am creating a claim, and if I configure the storage class, I have a storage class configured. When we are creating a PVC, if the volume is not available, what the storage class will do? Whatever storage class I am mentioning here, if the volume is not available, if I have a storage class configured, the provisioner configured, if I say something like this, what that storage class will do, guys? If the volume is not available, what the storage class will do? When I am creating a claim and there is no PV, there is no persistent value. And if I am mentioning the storage class and if I have a storage class configured in the Kubernetes cluster like EBS provisioner, NFS provisioner, what that storage class will do? Do I need to create a volumes manually, that PV object, or the PV will be automatically created? The storage object will be automatically created if I have a storage class configured. Guys, dynamic volumes concept. In some circumstances, if pod require a persistent volume and that is not exist, in those cases, it is possible to have a Kubernetes to provision the volume if the storage class is configured. So PV will be created. As of now, do I have any storage class configured in this cluster? I mean to say, do I have any storage class, the provisioner, which will create a volume for us dynamically? Do I have any storage class? There is no storage class. So you will not get a dynamically the value. So I am saying storage class as manual. What is the meaning of it? Do I get a PV automatically whenever I am claiming if the PV is not available? Do I get a PV object automatically? Now, if I apply this PVC, do I get a PV object automatically? Now, I am creating a claim also. This is my claim. This claim name I am using here, persistent value claim. I need read write once access mode. I need 1 GB storage. Since I don't have a storage class configured, I am saying storage class as manual. So will I able to get the PV automatically when I create a claim? If the PV is not there, will this PVC will create a PV automatically, or PV also needs to be created manually? No. Now let's apply this. Let's apply this and see what will happen. Now I created a claim. Cube CTL. Now pod is still in pending state. Pod is still in pending state. So now what is the problem? What is the problem? Now I have a PVC. Now I have a PVC, but does PVC is able to claim any PV? Now I have a PVC. PVC is there. Pod is using this PVC. It is trying to claim. But is it able to claim any value? Is it able to claim any value as of now? There is no value. There is no value. Why it is not able to create a value? Why PVC is not able to create a value when there is no PV? Did I have a dynamic provision? Did I have a storage class configured so that it can create a value if it is not available? So whenever pod requires a value, it will claim the value. If there is a storage class configured, the PV storage class will automatically create a PV, the storage value. Now I am getting this error. 3 pod has unbound immediate persistent volume claim. So I mean to say, this claim is not associated with any PV. Now what object I need to create as a Kubernetes administrator so that my pod can get a value? What object I need to create as a Kubernetes administrator so that my pod can get the value and the pod can be up and running? What object I need to create now? Manually. What object needs to be created, guys? Volumes are very important. That's why I'm like explaining the same thing again and again. What object I need to create now? I need to create a PV manually because I don't have a storage class configured. I don't have a storage class configured, dynamic volumes. So manually I need to create a value. So what object I need to create manually? Persistent value. So what type of value? What type of value you want to create, you can mention something like this. I can mention something like this, whatever. Host path, PV, how much capacity is required. This value mode is optional file system. That is anyhow it's a file system. What is the access mode you need, right? Suppose if I say here host path, something like this. Storage class. There is no storage class, so manual. I will come to this. What is this reclaim policies and all? So now, if I create something like this, and I have another value, something like this. I am going to create another value. Maybe you can say just 1 GB, read write many. You will say NFS. Server path, something like this. MNT/share my server, NFS server IP address. My NFS server IP address. Now, if I have a 2 volumes created, I have created this persistent value, 1 volume, 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 5 GB capacity, access mode is read write once, storage class is manual, host path, I am using host path persistent value, and I am creating persistent value. Access mode is read write many, storage class is manual, NFS, right? NFS value. Now, if I create these two persistent values, this claim will associate with which one? This is one question, guys. They asked in one interview, how PVC will be associated with PV? How PVC will be associated with PV if there are multiple values available? Based on what claim will be associated with value now? If I have two values created, based on what? Am I referring any name between this? This is my PVC name. Now, to which one the PVC will be associated if I create two PV objects, two persistent values? Which one it will be using? Based on what it will use? Based on what it will claim? Based on which it will associate? Based on what? One thing is based on the access mode. Now, I am trying to look for a read write ones. Is it matching with this PV object? Is it matching with this read write ones? No. And also, what is the next one? Storage. How much you are expecting? 1 GB. Suppose if I created this one with just 500 MI, even though access mode is same, is it matching with our requirement if I have this one? No. So based on what and all things, it will try to match, it will try to claim based on the access mode, based on the storage capacity, based on the, again, storage class name. Now, if I apply this one, if I create this one, it will not associate, guys. If you see, as a Kubernetes administrator, I am creating a value now manually, something like this. Line number 14, there is an error. Now, if you see, there is a PV. There is a PV available. There is a PV. Now, I created a persistent value. Persistent value I created manually. I'm using what type of persistent value I am using as of now? If you see, what type of persistent value? What is the access mode? What is the type? NFS. And why it is not able to claim? Why still this claim is pending? Why it is not able to claim this value? That is because of the access mode. That is because of the access mode. This PVC, I am looking for read write once, right? So now, that's why it is not claiming. Now let me try to create this one now. Whatever it is, whatever host path. kubectl apply -f. Now you see pvc get pv. Let me see my Spring app pvc. So here I created access mode, read write once. Storage class is manual. I'm looking for 1 GB, 1 GB. Yeah, now it has claimed. If you see, now this PVC is associated with which one? Now, do you see this PVC is associated now? So to which one it is associated now? kubectl get PVC, kubectl get PV. Now this value is claimed by this guy. Where I am using this claim, guys? Where I am using this claim? In our pod, our database pod. In our database pod. So now my pod is using that claim. Now do you see our database pod is up and running? Now database pod is maintaining the data in which storage now? The database pod is maintaining the data in which storage now? This database pod is using PVC, and PVC is associated with this PV. So what type of value now my database pod is using? Persistent value we are using. So if another pod requires a value, can I claim this? If another pod requires a value, can I claim this one? If I say access mode is read write many, if another pod requires a value, can I claim this one? As of now, this is available. This persistent value is still available. Can I claim if another pod requires the value based on the access mode, based on the capacity? Can I use this value for another pod? Yes. So this is how persistent values works. Persistent values and persistent value claims works. So Monday I will show you the dynamic provisioning. We will discuss about what is storage class, right? There are some concepts still here. Claim policies, what is retain, recycle, right? So we'll discuss this on Monday, guys. We'll continue on Monday. So for today, we discussed about what is PV, what is PVC, and how pods can use PV and PVCs. We'll continue on Monday, guys. Okay. It's already late. I have to start another class. We'll continue on Monday.